In this video, I would like to show you something very interesting, and that's about how to think with move candidates. Move candidates is not a very common method of thinking because it's usually slow and it's often required only in very challenging, difficult, or just problematic positions that we don't know exactly how to play up. Pretty similar to the position that we have on the board now. The game that we have was played between the Grandmaster Glazarov and Novgorodsky in Kazan 2007. As you can see, White's just made a sacrifice somewhere, and ultimately, well, he just played d6, attacking both the knight and the rook. So, despite the fact that Black seems to be a piece up, there are some problems, as you either lose the knight and you'll be a pawn down, or you'll lose the rook and you'll be an exchange down. Deciding what to do in such a position could be very difficult, especially if you try to look at the best move and you try to immediately spot it. Therefore, what you need to do is to try and look for what are the different type of candidate moves and possibilities that may be existing, and try to analyze them in a purposeful, in an ordered way. How could this happen? Well, see, the first thing to be made is that you have to look at the position, you have to look at the situation, and ask yourself, what are the move candidates? See, that's the very first thing. What are they? When I look at that situation right now, I think that we've got not that many moves. I mean, one of them is the worst one, but still looks somewhat reasonable, just to move our knight away. Then we're going to lose the rook, but it's okay. So then we have the bishop to b7 to lose the knight and save the rook. Then we have rook b8 to move the rook out of the way, and I think that's all about it. So you see, first of all, you need to select the move candidates that are most purposeful and connected to your needs in such a position, maybe to stabilize or to try and counterattack. And then after that, you need to prioritize them. Prioritizing the move candidate is an essential thing that will help you to decide how to do things here. Prioritizing may happen by, first of all, deciding on what moves should be more important, less important, and mostly I would tell you to prioritize them by complexity. It is because when you compare the moves, and if you start with the most complicated move, it'll be hardest for you to analyze it, and you're going to spend so much time, then even if there is a simpler and a lot better move instead of that, you're not going to have the time to go over this other move next, because you would have already spent so much time on analyzing this first one. So even if you don't like it in the end, you're going to probably play something else that's quick. This is why you have to always start your calculation with the simplest. Sometimes they happen to be the most forcing or the most losing, most straightforward moves that are easily going to be dismissed or just calculated. After that, in mind, we already know that from all these moves that are out here, I suppose the move that seems most terrible and easiest to calculate shall be knight e6. I mean, nobody would ever want to give away his rook. So if we do a move like knight e6, actually, I think that there is an even worse move. There is rook b8. So perhaps we can say it like that. Rook b8, then we have knight e6, and then we have bishop b7 for last. Let's begin with rook to b8. Starting with that kind of move, we see that White is just going to take on c7, and you have to sort of visualize the positions. People have often asked me, Valerie, how should I visualize a variation when I calculate? To visualize, all you need to do is to try and remember which pieces disappear from the board and which pieces change their positions. Everything else, like 85 to 90% of the remaining pieces, remain in their present squares. So you don't have to really memorize them. Just memorize which pieces change their positions or which pieces disappear from the board. So after rook b8 and d takes to c7, we realize that the rook will be lost, and we could most likely play a move of rook b7. And then after he takes our rook, like rook b8, d takes to c7, rook b7, bishop takes b7, and then bishop takes b7, we're going to make an exchange down, and most likely he'll close our bishop with a move of f3, so that this bishop can no longer attack or do anything on the king's side. Another opportunity we can go with is eventually the move of knight e6. After all, we decided that this move looks like an interesting continuation. We'll lose the rook, but okay, this was one of the worst moves. What do we do about that? See, as soon as people see bishop takes a8, they're going to hate the move. And I've seen many players like that. They may look like an interesting possibility, and just because they don't like the opponent's response, maybe after that or in the process of the variation, they leave the line halfway through and they never get back to it. And that's terrible to me. So you need to understand that when you're calculating with move candidates, the only way how you can know if certain line is good or bad is if you try to go at least 3 moves ahead within the given line. No matter what is your initial feeling about the line, you must calculate 3 moves ahead so you can be certain if it's going to work or not. Now, if we do knight e6 and then bishop takes a8, to my mind there is this idea of knight takes f4, g takes f4, so we got 2 moves so far. And now it doesn't seem to be so bad given the fact that we can do bishop to h3. And we can go against his king, most likely attack his bishop, the rook, and weaken his king's position. Is it safe? Certainly not. But if I now look at the simplest line with bishop to b7, I just think that after bishop b7, d takes to the c, and most likely bishop takes g7, bishop takes g, king takes to the g2, we're just a pawn down with no compensation. So what did black do in the position? He simply did knight e6. Comparing the move candidates can help you to decide on which one to go for. Actually, black had a little better calculation than just the idea of bishop h3. You have to try and analyze certain line as deeper as you can, as far as you can. Black didn't only evaluate the exchange sacrifice, but he also evaluated the fact that he can take the initiative over. Like, for example, if the white knight comes to d5, black will very quickly exchange. Now the king's side is very weak and this bishop is amazing, as opposed to that terrible rook on a2. The same thing happens if the white knight comes anywhere else, like to a4. Black is giving a check, and then he moves his own pawn up to c4, knowing that it becomes a dangerous pass pawn. As I said earlier, in open or more tactical positions, it's not important what pieces you have. It's important what pieces you can coordinate, you can use together. The a5, then knight a8, what black had, it was this brilliant possibility to keep that knight on the attack so that white cannot capture in c4. And at the same time, by taking on d6, we realize that if that knight comes to f5 within the next move, it wouldn't really matter that white has a rook up. This knight will be stronger than both of white's rooks taken together. It will be close in front of the king and brilliantly attacking. So white gave it away. He gave away the rook because he thought that maybe this is how he's going to stabilize, and it didn't work. Queen d7, a little check, another check, and we see that next move black is going to get the rook into play with more than enough of an attack. He's a pawn down, but his attack against white is simply fantastic. So you realize that in order to be good at calculation, especially the candidate moves, you simply need to follow a purposeful approach. Find out what you want in this position. Okay, would like to stabilize and counter. Look at the different move candidates that can help you with that. Okay, bishop b7, rook b8, knight e6. Order the move candidates so we can start with the simplest or the worst. The one candidates that you will evaluate and calculate faster. After you have done all of that, the most important thing to do next is to go with the weakest move candidate and find out its prospects at least 3 moves ahead. After you've calculated this way all of the lines you have in mind, then you're eventually going to choose the one that gives you better prospects or helps you to fight for something, for what you have initially suggested to achieve. I think this is a very good method, and you can try to use that in some of your own games whenever you need to calculate better.